we're on to our next session on glass success stories. We have the following people speaking. David Younger with the City of Decatur. Unfortunately, he had an emergency this morning, so he has given me permission to go over his slides. This might be the first time I'm seeing his slides, but I do live about 3 miles from Decatur, so I'm pretty familiar with the city. So bear with me as we go through his presentation. After that, we have Blair Pollock with Orange County, North Carolina. And then after that, Derek Riker with Haulin Glass, Cecilia Shutters with the Recycling Partnership, and Kanika Greenelee with the City of Atlanta. So I'm just going to go ahead and get into the Decatur, Georgia presentation. Decatur is 12 minutes east of downtown Atlanta. It has a population of 24,000 people. It is the county seat. There are some colleges and universities such as Agnes Scott and Emory and the CDC. They're very close by. And they have a full range of solid waste services. They do the collection of their solid waste and their recycling. And their combined budget is $60 million. Okay, hold on one second, just make sure. Okay. And in 2018, it was voted as the All-America City. And I would say Decatur is a bedroom community. Lots of young families live there. They're very progressive, and they really kind of are very concerned about the environment. So what the City of Decatur did, they decided, hey, what do we do about glass? We've had some of our MRF operators say they weren't taking glass anymore. Some of the haulers weren't taking glass. So they wanted to figure out what they should do. So what they did is they went and asked their residents. They provided a survey to all of their people. So here's the overview. Metro Atlanta recycling companies have announced that they will no longer accept glass, only if it is separated. The City of Decatur is deciding whether to continue to keep glass in the recycling program or remove it and send it to a landfill with other household waste. So these were the options that they put forward. Continue to offer residents the convenience of recycling glass at home by separate glass collection from the other materials, which would be an annual increase of $25 to $35, or the glass would go to the landfill and not be recycled. And the cost of that would be $10 to $15 a year. So overwhelmingly, the city went for option number one. 90.8% of the residents that responded said, yes, they want to keep glass in the recycling system and don't mind paying the extra cost. Sorry, I need to move my screen over so I can see the slide. The question number two, if separate glass recycling collection is offered, are you willing to provide your own bin that meets the city specifications if it reduces your annual solid waste fee by $5 to $7? And then the actual question was, should the city provide the recycling bin? And everyone said, yes, the city should provide it. And I'm sure that the citizens really thought about what it would look like when you drive down the street, if you had different types of bins there, if they all look cohesive, it makes the city just look a lot nicer as well. Okay, I'm trying to advance the slide. Hold on one second. Uh-oh. Ashley, can I give you control of the PowerPoint? Is that possible?
Absolutely.
Okay. Can you take control, or do I need to give you permission?
Nope, I should to just get show it right now. Can you see my screen?
I believe they're seeing my screen. Is that your screen or mine? I'm not sure. Sorry.
It was mine. No, you're good. It was my
okay,
screen.
good.
I just wanted to make sure. I was like, wait a minute, are they seeing my puppy? I have a picture of my puppy as the back.
We don't see any puppies.
The
okay, can you advance the screen? Oh, okay, I can do it too. It's working now. For some reason, I just think I had a glitch. And so some of the background information is they went over the options that were offered. the fact that the people would say, yes, they wanted the separate collection and with the container. And if they had any other comments, they could go to a certain website and provide that information. So what happened in, I believe it was 2018, hey, Decatur, get ready to move your glass. This is where your glass would be collected separately. And what they chose to use is a red bin for their recycling system. So it was a big deal. It was one of the first cities that I know of that has separate glass collection at the curbside. One other city is Alpharetta that also has separate curbside collection of glass. So they did a lot of information, sent out information to all their residents. Good news, you can continue to recycle your glass. They're very transparent about the cost and what the cost would be over the coming year. There was also a lot of information on the news locally. For 11 Alive is one of our local channels here, and they had stories on glass recycling there. And they were just really, really proactive in telling the impacts that what you're going to see that's going to be different. We don't want you to put glass in your other bin. Please make sure it's in the red bin. Here's the number to call. Here's the person to contact via email, to make sure everyone kind of knew that this change in service was coming. They also sent out cards, which, you know, with pictograms on it, so you can see the cardboard, beverage cartons, plastic bottles, metal, aluminum cans were totally separate from this glass bin that would go into the red bin. And here again, frequently asked questions. So on their website, do we really recycle glass? Yes, it's collected curbside and it goes straight to strategic materials. What is produced from our recycling of glass? And it kind of tells what kind of things it gets made into: more glass containers, fiberglass, abrasives, aggregate. And here is a picture of their truck. It's a very distinctive orange truck, so people know when that truck is going in the street that it is collecting their glass and then it's getting recycled. So that is the end of our glass collection in Decatur. I think that we'll hold all the questions to the end of this session so that we make sure we get to everyone. But next on our agenda, we have Blair Pollock with Orange County, North Carolina. So Blair, I'm assuming you can unmute yourself.
Yes, I am.
Oh, okay. And Ashley, I guess you're going to advance the slides, right?
I can do that.
Okay,
That's
great.
Thank
Thanks.
you. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Blair Pollock. I'm the solid waste planner for Orange County, North Carolina. They hired me, excuse me, 34 years ago this month to initiate public recycling, and I basically forgot to leave. So still having a good time at it, and see my friend Will Sager out there in the audience, and he's been at this about as long as I have, and still having a good time at it. So once you get the garbage in your blood, it's hard to get it out. Our program has got several components to it. It's all voluntary. Orange County still accepts glass at drop-off sites, commingled with single stream, and a curbside commingled with single stream, and in the 14,000 apartments we collect commingled, and also our limited commercial program. So today's presentation will focus on a voluntary effort that we've been conducting for the last year and a half, going on 2 years really, to get people to voluntarily separate glass from their single stream recycling. And I've got a few slides for you all. So we conducted a sector by sector recycling composition study a couple years ago, and the results showed that in our commercial sector, almost half by weight of what we collected was glass. So we knew that was going to be one of our focuses. And then you can see the rest of the tonnage throughout the program. And to echo the prior presenter, just as a demographic, Orange County is about 148,000 people. 3 towns, Chapel Hill, Carborough, and Hillsborough, hold about 62% of the population. And Chapel Hill is basically a company town, where UNC Chapel Hill is the company. Has been that way for a couple hundred years now. And Carborough was a mill town. Now it's the hip place to be, and Hillsborough has been the county seat since about 1759. So everybody's all in on recycling. It's been a great program for us, and we took a look a couple years ago at the fact that we were starting to pay more and more at the MRF. We reached about $60 a ton net tipping fee there last year, or 2 years ago rather, and we just, with strategic 75 miles away, we said, what would it be like if we shifted glass from the single stream to the to a separate collection, and got paid by strategic for bringing them quality glass. So at that point, the delta was about $80 a ton, and made a lot of fiscal sense as well as environmental sense. We started out with the bar and restaurant program, and there was little ready, fire, aim here, in the sense that one of the shopping centers with a big regional rock venue that's pretty popular, called the Cat's Cradle, said the shopping center called and said, hey, our private sector provider just said they're pulling the plug on recycling, so how about the county? So we were in the throes of starting to plan the glass program. So I wanted to show you a picture of the rough and ready version, where we took some of our dark blue heavy duty Schaefer roll carts and repurposed them for glass, and got some glass signs made, you can see up in the corner of the picture. And then the lighter blue rare bins carts to the right are for other single stream, and we ran around and educated all the bar and restaurant owners and managers kind of on the fly, followed up, and we got cranking with this for about 4 months until well, really 3 months, because Christmas here is a pretty quiet college town, and then came to a screeching halt like everybody else with COVID. Go ahead. So we ramped the program back up this spring, and one of my UNC intrepid interns got schooled in not being a desk jockey type of sustainability intern, but I said, okay, you've got the job, which means you're cleaning the carts, labeling the carts, delivering the carts, educating the bar and restaurant owners, and following up. So here's an example of Carolyn Hausler at work. Her father was thrilled when he saw the picture, her mother not so much. And we show how we're more effectively segregating and properly labeling the glass carts, and some of the rigorous protocols that we follow. It's very labor intensive and very hands-on. That's kind of our hallmark. We try to touch all of our customers. And for those of you who have dealt with bars and restaurants, you know that email, phone calls, and letters are distant second to personal knock on the door visits to start the conversation. So almost every one of our conversations started with, hey, I'm so-and-so from the Orange County Recycling Program, and we want to ask you to separate your glass. So most of the bars and restaurants in downtown Chapel Hill, Carborough are now on the program, and we're about to march into the hinterland shopping centers. Go ahead. So we also established a program a little earlier in the, this is May of 2019 here. So it's hard to remember exactly what year it is, because 2020 is such a lost year. So at two of our 5 staffed sites, we started out putting out separate containers for glass, and the guys who worked the staffed sites were really quite rigorous about ensuring that nothing got in there but glass. And so we put the banner up a little bit before, and we pulled the banner off on May 1, and you can see some of the methods that we use to educate the public. Go ahead. So a little of our collateral, we put some conventional advertising in the local publications, whether they were print or electronic, and the ad looks like that. I'd say the only flaw in all of our iconography and advertising is that lids and caps are okay, and by showing the jars, and labels are okay too. So by showing the jars and bottles naked like that, we didn't convey that message well. So these are some stock photos, and we should have gone back and shown caps, lids, and labels, because those are some of the criteria that we were asked about frequently. And those of you who remember the ancient days, you did have to pry that little ring off of your glass bottles and jars that had the little aluminum ring on it. We have the signs on all of our dumpsters, and our partner, the Glass Recycling Coalition, is recognized for their grant to us to refurbish all the containers. And we also tried some social marketing using a pledge card. So the pledge card, we approached people at the drop-off sites and said, would you consider pledging to recycle glass? But of course, as soon as COVID hit, that method of marketing came to a screeching halt because nobody wanted to get anywhere near you. And we really haven't revitalized that because it's still pretty sketchy. And unfortunately, North Carolina is only at about, we're 33rd of the nation in vaccination rate, not very good. Go ahead. So we had our all-purpose welder, painter, grinder guy come in and repurpose some of our old, formerly Passionate Purple containers. So Jeff ground the paint and rust off of 9 of the 30-yard roll-offs, put the new sign, painted them black, put the new signs on, and at the same time, we also partnered with our neighboring counties, Alamance County to the west, which was already collecting glass separately and putting it, using it for roadbed and other low value usage because they didn't really have a method to haul all the way to Strategic. And they're just enough further west, that additional 30 miles kind of undercut any sort of economic benefit taking it out of the single stream, and they were already segregating it. Our partner to the east, Durham County, had not been separating glass. We provided them with some of these roll-off containers that Jeff also refurbished, and so they positioned those at 3 of their 4 waste and recycling centers. Go ahead. So following this setup, we also went a little bit at risk and put the glass recycling roll-offs at all 4 of our unstaffed sites, and they're collected about once a month. We were plagued by illegal dumping, and it's always puzzling to me when you see, like, for example, one of these fire dish things for a little outdoor fire, portable outdoor fire pit. Somebody had to work mighty hard to get that dish into that 2 foot, less than 2 foot wide opening across the front. And then another fool put probably a 40-gallon bag of garbage in there. So we quickly redeployed Jeff and put bars on the windows of all of our containers. So for intrepid glass recyclers, that was kind of an inhibition because you really could only recycle 1 at a time, and with it closed like that, whereas before, if you had a small bin, you could dump the contents in there. And we did get a little negative feedback from people that said, I'm not taking the time to do that. I'm going back to single stream. So, but it did the job. And we now have really good quality glass from our staffed sites, our unstaffed sites, and our bar program, as well as from Alamance and Durham. So this is a typical load. This sort of the best case scenario, which is having a great covered area to store your glass, is also the worst case scenario, because where I'm taking the picture from is at the mulch pile. So the 2 items you really don't want right next to each other are glass and mulch. So fortunately, the bunker was deep enough that that didn't turn out to be much of a problem. And we had a couple of pinch points depending upon how it was handled, that the bar and restaurant program, the collector, discerned whether it was appropriate, sorted enough for the glass program. And we told them, like Strategic told us, don't worry about cans or bottles, do worry about plastic bags and other, garbage. So what you see here is a pretty good load, but it's going to be a little further picked over by our person on site before being put in the roll-off truck for hauling to Strategic. And our partners were obliged by their memorandum of understanding to deliver us material that was no more than 2% contaminated, which means 53 pieces of contaminant per ton of glass. And for those who are interested, I'll tell you how we came up with that later. But the loads to Strategic have been uniformly accepted, and we've been paid the top dollar figure of $20 a ton for everything we've delivered since the fall of 2019. Go ahead. So part of our infrastructure that we're going to move towards to get away from the mulch pile is also has also been financed in part by a grant from our state. DEACS stands for the Division of Environmental Assistance and Customer Service. And they, because of the regional nature of the program, were keen on supporting it. So we took one of our existing loading pads, repurposed it, and you can see in the slide on the lower left the new concrete, which is all heavy-duty concrete, 4,000 PSI, and tied into the existing pad appropriately. Murphy is always in the house, so what happened right after we got this all set up and ready to go was that our tire recycler failed to show up for several weeks. So the tire pile in the background is inhibiting us from actually using the new pad, but we do have a load pretty much ready to go sitting on the floor there. So as soon as that tire recycler wakes from his slumber, we'll be rocking and rolling. So to close out here, just a little bit of a summary of what we've done to date, closing in on 500 tons as of last month. So by the end of April, I'm sure we've exceeded 500 tons. You know, the slide, I won't go read the slide to you because you're all highly literate, just noting that the staffed sites accounted for the majority of what we collected ourselves, because the unstaffed sites didn't start till October of 2020, and the bars and restaurants kind of fell off the cliff for the last year that COVID came into being. So we'll see when UNC graduation happens this weekend if we get a bump in the bar and restaurant program. And we've also added, under my intern, 25 new bars and restaurants to that program, which she pretty much did by herself once I pushed her off the deep end of the diving board, so we're hauling about, just closing in on 15 tons at a time. That's the max capacity for our roll-off truck in a 30-yard open top box. Strategic gets our guy in and out of there in usually under a half an hour, unless there's extenuating circumstances, and he turns right around and comes back. And literally 2 miles down the road is an Ardagh bottle making plant that turns out 2 million bottles a day. So when people talk about markets, the infrastructure in North Carolina is quite robust. There's a company called Reflective that makes all that paint that you see and sparkle in the highway at night with your Corona bottle. So if you drank too many Coronas, you'll still see the sparkle in the roadway, and I help you guide you home. And that's all I have, and glad to take any questions when the time comes. Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot about going forward. I'm sorry about that. So our going forward, we're going to continue until we add all of the 150 or so bars and restaurants that are in Orange County that we service. North Carolina has a law obligating those serving alcohol on premises to recycle. So that's kind of our leverage. We're going to expand use at our 9 drop-off sites by pushing that a little harder. We're going to target some more multi-unit housing. We have sort of anemic participation at 3 sites, and notably the one we set up first is actually a little more than anemic. 240 units generate about 3 carts of clean glass a week. But you know, like anything else, you have to go back and back. So even though we had great commitment from the management initially, you know, after a year, we have to go back and refresh with the new move-ins and so on. And we don't attend any separate curbside collection, in contrast to our fellows in Decatur. And I was knocked out by the willingness to pay of others. So that's really it. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Blair. That's so interesting. And I think one of the important points you had at the end of your presentation was that to get I believe, a liquor license, you have to recycle glass. And I think that's one way we can use public policy to help promote more glass recycling.
Yes, right. Glass as well as any other beverage container. And you have to prove that by an affidavit or a letter from us or your other hauler that says, yes, we're doing that. And I don't know how rigorously it's enforced with the sort of eviscerated state government staffing these days, but I will say that because all bars and restaurants have had to recycle since 2009, when the legislation became active, it was a relatively short step to get them segregating. And any bar and restaurant that had been around since the 90s we had them at that point separating green from clear from brown, so at least they don't have to do that anymore. So we had a little bit of a sort of cultural nexus for getting glass, going back to the future with separated glass.
Great. Okay, thanks again. All right, next in our presentations, we are going to be hearing from Kanika Greenelee with the City of Atlanta. She spoke earlier, but she's going to go a little bit more in depth on what they're doing with glass in Atlanta. And we're going to hear from Derek Riker, who is with Haulin Glass, and also Cecilia Shutters with the Recycling Partnership. So I believe the next presentation is going to begin with Derek, right? Let's see, could you advance that, Ashley, please? Oh yeah, so here we are, Haulin Glass. I love that has the apostrophe in there. So we're gonna hand it over to Derek Riker.
All right, thank you so much. And Blair, excellent presentation. I really enjoyed that. It gave me a lot of ideas because there's certainly some similarities between our programs. So I'm Derek Riker. I started Haulin Glass Recycling in 2018. You can advance the slide. It's a for-profit company, and we do recycling, glass recycling, a separate stream for bars, restaurants, apartment complexes, etc. B2B. Launched the service in June 2018, and so far recycled 1.1 million pounds. So it's going to be 550 tons. I didn't put anything in tonnage because a lot of times I'm presenting this to bar owners or event spaces, so tons don't help them out too much. But I'll try to do the conversions quickly for you guys as we move through. All right, so for the service, I provide 64-gallon recycling carts exclusively for glass. As you all probably know at this point, it's all colors, co-mingled containers and bottles. Caps can be on, labels. Then educate bar staff, event staff, apartment managers, whoever's going to be our customer, and so that they can then educate their customers, their residents, whoever's going to be the end user of that container. Provide collection services. So the range right now is every other week for our smaller customers, up to twice a week for our biggest customers, sometimes 3 times a week, depending on what event schedules they're looking at, and then just ongoing support. So we monitor the contents of the containers for contaminants, weigh everything, give receipts to everyone, letting them know this is how much you generated each month. And 100% of that glass that we collect is recycled. Next slide, please. All right, so I work with Strategic Materials. All the glass makes its way to them in College Park. It's been a absolutely terrific partnership. It's about 30 minutes south of the city of Atlanta, so that's predominantly where the collection of the glass is going on, inside the actual Fulton County, and then sometimes up into Sandy Springs area. Bring it down to Strategic Materials, drop that glass off in their bunkers. From there, it's going to be processed into that glass cullet, which you see on the right side. Next slide, please. And then it can make its way back into our local economy. So 1,300 people are employed in Georgia directly utilizing this recycled glass material. As you've probably heard today, recycled glass takes 30% less energy to produce glass than using virgin materials. So that's very important to us. And the narrative of the company is to just get this information out to our customers that, we're collecting this glass, we're not transporting it very far, and then it's going to be back into the production in the state of Georgia. We're not shipping it anywhere else. And I think that certainly helps to get people engaged in this recycling process when they hear, well, we can collect glass and then in some can even be remanufactured into a glass bottle and back on a shelf in a store within 30 days. They get really excited about that and become pretty overjoyed to be part of that process and take something that was going into the landfill and making it something positive. Next slide, please. All right, so where does the glass come from? As I touched on, restaurants, event spaces, apartments and residences, stadiums have a large public drop-off program now, and then also events. So I do select events with different communities, many on Earth Day, things like that. Some different communities do hard to recycle material events. So that's been a growing part of what we do over the past year, particularly as these some of these restaurants and event spaces have shut down, and the public drop-offs has also been a growing portion, particularly with people being home because of COVID, and I think even more increased interest in recycling over the last year as well. Next slide, please. So as we can see, 2020, it shut down a lot of businesses, temporarily, and some are still coming back online. So kind of the big pivot that we did last year was focusing on these apartments, residences, events, and really the best thing that we found was these public drop-offs. We just had this serendipitous event where at the beginning of 2020, we began working with liquor stores in Atlanta to provide a bottle return program where the liquor store actually pays for us to come pick up glass recyclables from their storefront, and their customers will obviously bring glass bottles from that they bought at the liquor store, but also we get a lot of Topo Chico and things from Trader Joe's and other things. It's a public drop off. Anyone can bring anything, and the stores that are providing this service are very happy to do that because it's increased their sales quite a bit. So that's been tremendous. Last year we did 150 tons of glass just from that program alone. I think it's probably going to be 200 tons this year. It's something that really grew exponentially from the start. We started with 10 carts at the one store in Buckhead, the Tower Beer, Wine and Spirits store. It was 10 carts getting picked up weekly. Then it was 10 carts getting picked up twice a week. From there, we added 15, 20, now we're at 25 carts. So in those pictures, if you actually see, there's the recycling carts on the front, and then now we have carts on the side as well. So there's 13 on the front, 12 on the side, and every Monday they are completely full with glass. People have just been really excited about it. Word of mouth has gotten out, and it's been tremendous. We've been able to roll that out to some other stores, and we're going to keep pushing to do that to try to create a better map in Atlanta of where you can take glass recyclables, because people are now calling us, every week asking, hey, I live in this part of town. I know I could drive to Buckhead and recycle this glass, but is there somewhere closer that I can go? So I'm working to certainly expand that program, because it's been a huge driver for our glass volume. Next slide, please. Finally, I just want to say that last year obviously was a struggle for everyone, but thanks to, I guess, being creative and a lot of luck with starting this program at the right time, last year we were able to recycle 600,000 pounds of glass, about half of that coming from that curbside program, and the rest of it coming from multifamily apartment complexes. And I think just having creative solutions to glass recycling, makes it possible and viable. And there's a lot of solutions, not just what you saw in my presentation, not just what you saw in Blair's presentation. There are a lot of creative, intelligent people working on this program, and I think there's a lot of options to implement and expand glass recycling through Georgia, through the Southeast, and throughout the country. Thank you.
Thank you, Derek. And thanks for all the hard work you've done. Wow. Next up, we have Kanika Greenelee and Cecilia Shutters presenting information on what they're doing next in Atlanta.
So good afternoon, everyone. So this morning, I talked about some of the myths and facts about the City of Atlanta's curbside recycling program. And we are not only accepting glass, but we're recycling glass as well. at SMI in College Park. One of the tools that we use, we've had a partnership with the Recycling Partnership since 2017 when we did a pilot to reduce contamination and increase participation. We then went into a 3-year grant process, and we're in year 3 of that process to do some of that work. But along the way, they've helped us with navigating other challenges that are in our recycling program. And one of those challenges, as I mentioned earlier this morning, was glass and how do we handle it. So they have this handy tool that you can find on their website. And it basically walks you through, should glass stay in your single stream program, or what are your other options? So should it go to, if it stays in curbside, you follow that arrow. If you're looking for other options, such as a drop off or source separated, or drop off of multi-materials, or if unfortunately you can't recycle glass in your community, it walks you through that. So that's the first page. And if you go to the next slide, the second page just gives you a little bit more color and detail of what the visual provided. And as we all know, and we've heard multiple times today, we know that there are markets for glass in Georgia. And this was a very helpful tool in us, deciding to keep glass in our curbside recycling program. Cecilia, did you have anything you wanted to jump in and add?
No, thanks for walking through that. And I just sort of bridging between what Derek was saying and Kanika, what you said earlier today and just now, I think, as we're driving towards solutions, it does often take a coalition of all different kinds of stakeholders to move that forward. The city is certainly, Kanika's work to ensure that glass stays in single stream, Derek's work, and I know Derek has worked with several nonprofit, partners and private sector partners across the city to continue to add access. These types of things are really important. I just want to point out that the coalition of different stakeholders is really important, and appreciate all the work that's been done, from all those stakeholders. So the other thing is, as Kanika mentioned, we're in a 3-year grant, the Recycling Partnership, through some original funding that came from the Coca-Cola Foundation. We're in year 3. That, to round out another 3, we work in 3 work streams: single family, which this info card that you're looking at right now is representative of that work, multifamily, and university. And I'll talk a little bit later about the multifamily aspect of this, but I think, Kanika, you're going to kind of dig in here on what we've been looking at and why it's important from a communication standpoint.
Yeah, so I talked a little bit this morning about how we never left glass off of our information of accepted materials. And so I just wanted to provide some visual examples, and you'll find these on our website, which is atlantanga.gov/recycling. But as you can see, we have glass bottles and jars, along with all the other commodities that we accept in our cart. And then the next one is a part of our contamination work that we did with the feet on the street. The next slide is our OOPS card, which shows pretty much a mirror image of this, what goes out and what goes in. And as you can see there is glass. I was really excited to see earlier in this session what Orange County, North Carolina is doing, and how they're continuing to promote glass. We will be doing a more PR campaign specifically around glass. You'll see in our marketing materials that will be mailed out to all of our single family recycling customers. They'll list all the commodities that we accept that include glass, but we'll also have an extra call out about glass. So we'll be making sure that residents know that we're not just accepting it, but we're recycling it. And we'll be doing more communication strategies specifically around the recyclability of glass and making sure that we get more glass in our curbside recycling program.
I think that's an important thing to point out because there are so many questions about glass from the single family side in the city of Atlanta, and just driving that communication, you know, is important as a way to build public trust in the system, and encourage people to know that their glass is being recycled, despite, you know, kind of the back and forth in the public dialogue around glass as a commodity. It is being recycled. It should stay in single stream in the city of Atlanta in your curbside cart. And I do think that kind of communication is important to, again, ensure trust in the system, you know, across the whole system. So we were just talking about the success in Atlanta in single family. And I also want to call out that in the multifamily work stream, we have been working with a couple of multifamily partners to drive improvements to their recycling and leverage the opportunity on that pilot program to bring glass into their buildings as source separated there on site. And Derek in Haulin Glass and Scott DeFife have been instrumental in bringing that opportunity to us and trying to connect the dots. It was interesting because of the two partners we worked with, one took the opportunity and the other decided not to. And I just want to mention that one of the reasons why I think, you know, it was attractive was because the residents were really interested in it. But on the flip side, in 2020, it was just a really hard thing, I think, for multifamily properties, given a lot of the uncertainty around COVID and the extra work their on-site teams were dealing with, you know, to take on an additional cost potentially in the future. I just want to call out that was a consideration and part of the discussion, but we're excited to see the pilot in place and see what kind of tonnage is driven with glass specifically through that partnership. So I just mentioned that quickly, and appreciate the opportunity that both Scott DeFife and Derek brought forward in that project.
Great. For the benefit of those that aren't in Atlanta, could you kind of explain the ordinance and what it says and how it relates to multifamily glass collection, and what are the barriers that's different between collecting it from the resident as opposed to living in a multifamily apartment complex?
Sure. So in 2008, City of Atlanta put forward an ordinance for multifamily dwellings. And so that's anything with 6 units or more, stating that they must provide recycling options for their residents that mirrors the City of Atlanta's single stream program for single family households. So, you know, an ordinance can be just that, but you have to have some guidance and sometimes some enforcement around that. And so in partnership with our One Atlanta office and the Mayor's Office of Sustainability, they've really taken the lead on making sure that multifamily dwellings within the City of Atlanta know about this ordinance, and that they are measuring and tracking the data to make sure that they're compliant. Not only do they know, but they're complying with it. We really haven't moved forward with a strict enforcement policy, but we are seeing some good compliance and results now that more and more we're getting more and more just emails about multifamily people that live in apartments or condos saying, hey, I know that there's an ordinance, but my building is not doing it. Can you help us? And so one of the challenges, I think, with multifamilies, especially in the City of Atlanta, is like if they weren't built to have that infrastructure in place for recycling, it's really challenging for them to understand how to put that in place. So just kind of walking them through those sorts of steps. I live in a condo, and it's more like a garden style condo that may look similar to apartments. And that was, one of our challenges, finding the infrastructure in place, because they're always going to have the infrastructure in place for garbage, but not necessarily for recycling. So just making sure that they're aware and helping them follow through those steps in that process.
Great, thanks for that. Yeah, and it seems like a lot of the haulers that are servicing multifamily, they prefer to have glass collected separately. So that's kind of one of the drivers here as well. We had a couple of questions from earlier. Are y'all done? I just want to make sure I'm not cutting you off. We've got a few more minutes. Good?
Yes.
Okay. Moses had a question to Derek. Where did you think the glass was coming from that was being deposited at the liquor store areas? Was it from residential or multifamily, or can you tell?
There's honestly, there's no way of knowing, but it is where that larger facility or the larger collection is taking place is in Buckhead. So there are many apartment complexes there. It's apartment complexes, it's condos primarily. So I think, the residents right in that area who are recycling there, it's probably going to be mostly multifamily. But then I do know some, we have people who drive pretty far to use that facility as well. 30 minutes. So they might be coming from even outside of Fulton County, where possibly a single family home, and they don't have access to glass recycling. So they bring it to one of our drop off sites.
Great. Well, one more question while we have you up, Derek. Blair wanted to know if you're accepting other materials at the apartment complex when you collect glass.
Sure. So we just do glass because in Atlanta, there are many companies doing a fantastic job on single stream recycling. And, a lot of to talk to or speak about what Kanika said, we definitely see issues where some of these apartment complexes don't have the infrastructure to fit all of the different options in, or maybe it wasn't initially designed to fit everything. When we're looking at, after COVID, a huge influx of cardboard packaging. Everyone's at home, probably ordering things off of Amazon. So I see a mix of, there's some apartment complexes that have my company doing glass recycling. They have one company doing 8-yard containers just for cardboard. Then they have another company doing 96 gallon carts for single stream. So it's unique with each customer, but because there are so many good options for kind of traditional recyclable materials in Atlanta, I just stick to glass.
Great, thanks, Derek. We've got another question on who is responsible for the education of multifamily on recycling, and maybe that's something maybe you're planning with the pilot program with multifamily, and maybe if you have any suggestions on studies to determine the best ways to communicate with these types, either Cecilia or Kanika.
I'll just say that the responsibility of who is educating that is the question. It's a great question. The properties themselves, you've got the ordinance, which is sort of, the push to educate and to provide access to recycling. But just putting out the access and the infrastructure isn't going to be enough. You've got to provide education to residents to know not only that it's there, but how to use it. And that education, just like in single family, is continual. It has to be sort of done continuously because, people move in and out. People are Atlanta is a pretty transient city. People are moving in and out of the city. And so that education has to be sort of a commitment that's made in an ongoing, mindset. I think through the pilot program, we were testing a suite of different educational vehicles. to test which ones were most sort of effective and how residents responded to each of those. And those materials ranged from info cards to effectively what are like grocery bags, but that have the info card, printed on the side of the bag. So it's like a tote to take the material down to the centralized recycling space. We also tried, we were testing out the sort of do not disturb door tags. If you do not disturb in hotels, you are probably familiar with that tag that hangs on the door. We tried that, and that says a reminder to participate, but also had the info of what you can and cannot recycle on site. And so that, along with social media, email reminders, so we had this sort of suite of different tactics that we were trying out. And we finished one of the pilots, and we're about halfway through the second pilot. So we're just wrapping up the findings from that experience, and we'll hope to have good findings to share at the end of it. But I will say that in the post survey, one of the top findings was that just the basic info card, which you all saw what the single family, we showed earlier what the single family info card looks like. Just that sort of postcard size info card was really well received, and residents, just a basic reminder of what you can and can't recycle, and having that on hand was really, really well received in the first pilot that we ran.
And I think, from the local government perspective, education and outreach dollars are always the hardest to come by. And if you do have them in lean budget times, they're the first things to get cut. Anybody that's worked with a local government knows and understands and can appreciate that. But we are working again, like with our sustainability team in the mayor's office. And I think this pilot will hopefully produce some good findings on how to best reach that audience. I think we've done a really good job of honing in on single family and how to do education and outreach with that, and hoping that will also translate to multifamily. And for those that don't know, City of Atlanta, about 50% of our residents live in multifamily. So that's a huge untapped market that we're not reaching, and we definitely are working to do a better job with that.
Great. Okay, we have one more question. On your information, is it in English only, or do you use different languages either on the card or the bags?
So on this last info card that we did, it was in English only, but we recently had a temporary service change due to COVID, where we went from weekly collections to bi-weekly collections for a 90-day period. And we did test that out to do English and Spanish speaking, and it was received well. So we're looking to do more of that as well.
And on the pilot side, in terms of what TRP is creating as far as resources are concerned, we do offer materials, educational materials in translated and transcreated versions. So that includes, we've been working on that in projects across the country to make, the materials accessible in multiple languages. So if you're interested in more resources like that, you feel free to reach out and we can connect you with what we've got.
Yeah, I'll follow up on that. For those of you on the call that may not know the Recycling Partnership, they have tremendous resources on their website, and they have the infographics and everything you need to put together an education program, maybe in a building or a multifamily, and you can put your city's logo on it or your nonprofit logo on it as well. So it kind of looks like yours, but it's really professionally done, and they're multiple other resources on their website too. So it's the recyclingpartnership.org, and I'll put it in the chat box in a minute. All right, come on. Someone has to have one more question. Well, we're almost to this end of this session, and we're scheduled for a break anyway to come back to do some collaborative work, and that's the last part before our video at the end. So why don't we, unless someone has another question, why don't we
Abby,
go ahead?
I was gonna ask Derek one more question about what's the maximum number of carts that he thinks he can get at one of those total beverage stores, wrap around the entire store.
That one store that has 25, actual space, we probably have space for about 45. I'm interested to see what we eventually get to. More recently, after the weekends, we have run into every single cart being full, them actually being stacked and boxes left nearby. So we might be adding more carts soon, but we're not going to be at 30. Maybe we'll be at 27 or 28. And I can't imagine how many people would have to be traveling to that store from all over the place to actually wrap the carts around the building.
I think it's fantastic. It shows demand, right? I mean, people want to recycle that glass, and I think it's great if the store can show increased sales. That's
definitely it's been tremendously exciting, and Strategic Materials actually helped us maybe about a month ago, film a video highlighting their program. So I'm very excited to see that coming out, and feel very fortunate that we have the support from these stores to do programs like this.
Yeah, and also I just want the Glass Packaging Institute, we are a member of the TRP, so I just wanted to echo the things that you were saying about the recycling partnership, and we're happy to help with Cecilia and Kanika's multifamily pilot, and we're hoping it grows and that we see some more of these multifamily facilities take on separate glass recycling. So,
and Derek, I've definitely experienced the full carts at Tower. I had to change my weekend juice runs to maybe a Thursday or earlier on a Friday, so I can make sure that I could get all my glass bottles in, because while we have recycling here in my condos, they do not accept glass.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought, Abby, one more for Derek. How many 96-gallon carts can fit in one truck?
That is a great question. So they're 64-gallon carts.
Sorry, 64. Okay.
Yeah, I don't use the 96-gallon because they weigh too much when they're filled with glass, but it's about 55. I actually had the sidewall of the truck increased earlier this year to bump it up from about 40 because it was just filling up so quickly. And so now it's about 55, and that's going to be really maxing it out where the truck is at, total gross vehicle weight, 20,000 pounds, hauling 8,500 pounds of glass. And yep.
That's great. Thank you.
I have a question actually for Blair. If I'm curious about the education component more broadly speaking. I know you all do sort of these individual knock on the door approach, and that seems to be working really well for particularly, it sounded like bars and restaurants. But how do you all approach sort of broader education on glass?
The public part of it?
Right.
Okay, well, it's been taking that same approach, as I said earlier, has been really challenging. I'm big on and generally have been throughout my career, on a high touch approach, as opposed to doing everything via mail and other kinds of information like that. So those approaches unfortunately have really gone away. I don't know if and when they'll come back. So initially we were actually, I had some of my interns and temps at the staffed waste and recycling centers that have about 400,000 total visits a year, with palm cards and talking to people who wanted to talk to them, giving out bins initially to people that wanted them. We found that most people who were enthused about recycling glass didn't want a bin. They said, yeah, I have a 5-gallon bucket, or I have what I need. So we stopped offering those. And those banners that you saw earlier that says glass recycling begins May 1 or whatever, we left them up at all of our staffed and unstaffed sites to kind of be a prompt for those who didn't, see the dumpster itself. And with the we're on a local radio show monthly, and I usually try to wave the flag for any progress in the glass program, et cetera. But it's really not been a kind of, because there's so much messaging that has to happen from us. And somebody said once, 80% of your brain is sex and money, meaning relationships in the material world. So we're competing as recyclers for a tiny sliver of the 20% that's left. And so, between the contamination messaging that we need to push, or anti-contamination, as it were, and other things, glass only gets a sliver of the sliver, no pun intended. And just soldiering along the best we can. So it's very gradually increasing, but it seems to have plateaued. And so I can't really say that, a big thrust towards the public doing glass, but it's diffusing. So last week, a co-housing community with 60 units came and said, we want to start recycling glass separately. And one of our people goes to your staff site weekly with all of our scrap metal batteries and other non-recyclable in the cart stuff. So we're going to start doing glass. So we also promote those kinds of grassroots efforts, and a lot of it, like I said, is very homegrown and high touch and responsive, but we haven't lately been able to really promote and push the program the ways that I'd like.
Great, thank you. We are officially at our session end, just right on time. Gloria, I don't know if you wanted to kind of give a shout out about our giveaways that we might have at the end of the next session, so that we can get people to come back and do some of our collaborative work at 110.
Yeah, I think the work is really going to start now in these next sessions after our break. But just to let you know, we have 4 great prizes, giveaways for attendees. 2 of those are Smart Glass, which is a local artisan vendor here in Metro Atlanta. And she has made sea glass upcycled necklaces. We have a green one and an aqua one to give away. So that's 2 of it. We also are very pleased to have a donation by Milena Gauss at Lammergeier out of Savannah. And she is making 2 handmade, a set of 4 handmade bourbon tumblers, glassware, cut from Savannah Ghost Coast Distillery glass bottles. You can't get more local than that. Empty bottles made into great new upcycled glassware. And then our last gift will be allowing you to maybe buy some stuff on your own, made packaged in glass, and that will be an Amazon gift card for $50. So stay tuned. Come back for the breakout sessions for the real work. And then we'll have our closing session, the giveaways, and a virtual tour.
Great, thanks. We'll see you all back here in about 9 minutes at 110. Thanks.
Bye.